Everyone has a good story to tell, and you know it is a good story when the person leans in and says, "See, what had happened was," and then tells the story.
This podcast provides those opportunities to tell those types of stories in education. The stories will be from the good, the bad, and everything in between. We wanted to do this podcast to showcase stories in education and to give flowers to educators who deserve recognition for their excellence.
Our guests will feature parents, students, teachers, administrators, and just about anyone who is involved in education. These stories will inspire you, challenge you, and help you to reflect on your practice of education, whether it be from the inside of the classroom or outside.
If you have a good story to tell, we'd love to hear it. Email us at contact@andredowdy.org. We'd love to have you or your story on a future episode. See What Had Happened starts now. Welcome to See What Had Happened. We're your co-hosts, Danielle and Andre Daughty. If this is your first time tuning in, thanks for dropping by.
Hey, appreciate it.
We've got several episodes for you to laugh and listen to. You'll also enjoy stories from the good, the bad, and everything in between.
And all of those stories are on the podcast places. So wherever you go to find your podcast, we're right there. And if you're tuning right now, you're looking at us on YouTube as well. So either of those platforms will work to see what had happened.
Hey, and if you've been following us all along and are friends of the podcast, we welcome you back to the family. Today, we have a special guest joining in on the phone, Mr. Al Summers.
Al, how you doing, man?
Doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you hanging out with us today, man.
Well, it's good to be here. It's good to be talking with you.
Yeah.
So, Al, I know you. Danielle knows you. Some of our listeners may not. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, the COVID knocked me pretty much out of work, but I had been in education for 45 years.
Wow.
I taught middle school science for 28 and retired and went on and worked for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards for 3 years. And then I worked for the National Middle School Association for 7 years. And then I got involved in a grant in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's what really introduced me to project-based learning. And for the past 7 years, I've been really, really involved in project-based learning work.
The way this podcast is set up, it is real easy. Set up the story for us, Al. Is this from a parent's perspective? Is this from a student, you as educator? Go ahead and set the story up for us, please.
Okay, it was actually my last year coaching basketball. And I was a teacher at the time, but I was also the head varsity basketball coach.
Okay.
And so the viewpoint of this one is coming from the coach.
Okay.
Hey.
As a coach.
And of course, the coach is supposed to know all and be all and do everything. But it was a learning experience that impacted me. And when I think back, this incident stands out more in my mind, literally, than anything else that happened to me in my teaching and coaching career.
How long were you a coach?
What's that?
How many years were you as a coach?
I coached boys for 28 and girls for 3.
Wow.
But I want to go back. It was my last year coaching. We ended up going to the state final game. We were the small school division. We were a little bitty rural school. And so we were the smallest division in Ohio. There's 4 divisions in boys basketball.
Okay.
And we had a year, we had no player over 6'2". But I had worked with them since they were like in the 4th grade. And they could shoot, they could defend, they could handle the ball. And we knew we were going to be pretty good, but with no kid over 6'2", and we play in a bruising conference. Matter of fact, one of the teams that year had a kid that was like 6'11".
Wow.
And you got to do certain things.
Yeah, that's a mismatch right there. Yeah.
So anyway, we played with that group. We played an open post offense, nobody in the post, and we switched every screen on defense. We just went nuts. We just tried to disrupt what the other team was doing. And we were pretty good. Now, we got a late start because in a small school, the kids play 2, sometimes 3 sports. And these kids were all in football, and they went to the state final game in football. So we only had 2 weeks of practice, and we had to postpone the first 2 weekends games. So in January, we had like an NBA schedule. Mm-hmm. And we were playing 5 games in 9 days with high school kids. And we were in the 3rd game. Now, I got to tell you, I graduated high school in 1967. I'm a dinosaur. And I had all the, how shall I say, teaching and coaching. When I was in school, I had a lot of the examples of how not to do it.
Yeah.
But we thought that was the way to do it because they were successful. So when I got into teaching and coaching, I was a type A personality. I was a drill sergeant in practice. I was a drill sergeant in the classroom. And fortunately, I got smarter and smarter with my teaching. But in my coaching, I tended to stay in that drill sergeant mode. And I lost a couple of kids, and they were good kids, and they came in and said they wanted to quit. And I basically, my attitude was, well, if you want to quit, quit. Get out of here. Don't bother us. But my last year, we were having a great run, and I had some great kids. And we got home from an away game, and I had pulled this young man out of the game at one point because he was making mistakes that we had worked on over and over. And it was one of those gyms where the fans sit right on top of him. And I kind of chewed him out. I guess I really chewed him out. And, of course, all of our fans behind us heard that. So we get back to the gym, and everybody's getting their stuff out of their lockers. They're getting ready to go home. And the freshman coach says, Coach, Bill Gass is going to quit. And he was the kid I pulled out of the game. Okay. And I said, what do you mean he's going to quit? Now, the old me would have said, well, if he wants to quit, let him quit.
Yeah.
Let him go. But Bill was such a good kid, such a hard worker, and I knew I had wronged him to an extent. And so I said, Coach, look, make sure Bill doesn't leave the gym till I talked to him, because I knew once he walked out the door, it was over. He wouldn't come back. That'd be it. And we sat in my coach's office, he and I, it was 11 o'clock at night, school night. We talked probably for 2 hours. And my whole approach at that point was different than I had ever taken. How can I undo the things I did when I chewed you out at the game? And he talked and I listened. And for one of the few times ever as a coach, I really truly listened to a kid. And we had to practice the next day because we had a game 2 days later. And he came back in the gym and he held his head high. And basically we had come to an agreement that was kind of like, okay, Bill, I'll do this as long as you continue to be a hard worker, as long as you continue to do everything you can to truly be the best player you can be. And so I didn't feel like I was sticking my neck out, but I feel like I was taking an approach that I maybe had never, ever considered before. And we went on, we finished 24-3. He was a pivotal player.
Wow.
In that. And he was 5'10", and we'd sneak him in the post. As a matter of fact, the state semifinal game, they were big. It was a private school, and they kind of recruited. I shouldn't say that probably, but it's the truth.
It's the truth. We know a lot of the schools do that. So, yeah. Statute of limitations over anyway. So.
And we'd sneak him in the post, and he had maybe his best ball game of his life in that state semifinal game. And it was so good. Number one, it was so good to see him shine like that. But it was so good to know that had I taken my usual approach, he probably wouldn't have even been there to play. And who knows what that might have done to him. And now he's 39 years old. He's in his family's business. He's got a wonderful family, wife and kids, and they're living in the same town where he played basketball.
Wow.
And it's neat to see him grow up like that. But I used to tell my teams that I would learn as much from them as they would learn from me. But that year, in that particular incident, I learned a lot more from an 18-year-old than I ever dreamed I would. And it was an amazing thing. And when you talked about me coming on, one of the things that was just grabbing my brain was, I need to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I think he knew, but I never talked to his parents about that incident until 10 years later. And I went to him and I said, Bo and Jane, I said, I got to tell you about something. And I told him the story. And I said, I learned more from Bill that night than I've learned from hundreds of other people, in my lifetime. And it was a changing thing. And I think as I went on and became an education coach and became a leader in organizations, it stuck with me that it's like the old saying, God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth, which should say listening is twice as important as talking. And so one of the things that's really stuck with me is I need to listen to whoever it is so that I can understand truly where they're coming from. Because if I don't, we're not going to get anywhere.
And I'm thinking about this because now you've got me reflecting on like when I was a coach or even in those leadership positions, how everybody doesn't respond the same to the same type of talk back. So your coaching ability, you said you were type A. So when I think that, I think more like a Coach K type of a talk where this is what we're doing. This is how we execute it. If you do this play, it will work if you execute it my way. And I guess Bill didn't do that in that instance. And so you are letting Bill know it. And Bill was like, I respond better if you don't scream at me. Or if you don't.
Bobby Knight.
Yeah. Don't Bobby Knight me. Talk to me like Phil Jackson and I'll respond better or whatever. And I appreciate like hearing this. You were open to it where other coaches, they're like, I'm no little kid going to tell me what to do. I'm the grown man. I'm the blah, 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 blah. But in this situation, you were open to Bill.
Right. And it was, I don't want to say I was proud of myself, but I guess I really was because it was an approach that I normally would not have taken. And it helped him. It helped me. And I'll tell you the funny thing, Andre, is as the season went on and we were going far in the tournament, a lot of my old time players would come back and watch practice. And they would say, boy, you sure have grown soft in your old age. and I guess I had, but I think it was really I had grown more understanding. Instead of being the drill sergeant and ordering, let's find out where they are. And just like you do with students in the classroom, let's find out where each one is, how they respond, what they respond to, and then try to get each one of them as further along as we possibly can in the time that we have with them.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's a good connection right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Al, normally I would ask, what would you do differently? But it seems like you've already had the reflective moment and you have shared that.
Well, I will answer that question, Danielle.
Okay.
Because it wasn't, I guess it's not so much as what would you do differently. It was, I sure wished I'd have learned that years ago. So that I wouldn't have lost those players in the past. So that maybe I would have still lost them, but at least I could have come from their point of view as well as my point of view.
Yeah.
Now, I got to tell you one little side note from that season.
Mm-hmm.
In the district, in Ohio, the district is the second round. We go sectional, district, regional, state.
Okay.
So we were in the second round semifinals, and that same team made 25 threes.
Mm.
And that's a state record.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we knew we had really good shooters, but as coaches, we would always ask, what would it be like if they were all on the same night?
At the same night, yeah, yeah.
And it was amazing. As a matter of fact, we had them quit. We had them quit shooting threes at the end of the third quarter because we had a comfortable lead, and I didn't want to make it seem like we were, you know what I'm saying?
Running up the score, yeah.
Rubbing it in.
Uh-huh.
But it was a special team, and I learned a lot from them. But the key one was Bill Gast, and that night. And I also think about, had the freshman coach not intervened, had the freshman coach not come to me and said, Coach, I think Bill's going to quit, then Bill would have left, and it might have been over.
Right.
So having those, and you know, as a coaching staff, we were a team. As a faculty, you're a team.
Yeah.
And to have those supportive teammates to help with communication and to help see problems, hopefully before they get too bad, it's a really important thing. Because if it would have just been me on my own, the whole thing would have been different. I'd have never known he was going to quit. He'd have left. He'd have gone home.
Yeah.
And that probably would have been it.
And then shout out once again, because that's a culture setup. Like there are some times where the assistant coaches, they don't have the power to say, hey, you went too far, coach. Or, you know, hey, coach, you might want to see it from this different perspective. And so for that coach to say, hey, I think you're about to lose Bill. And for your ears to be open to have that conversation with him before you talk to Bill, like that means something just as well. The courage for him to speak. Because like you said, he's just a freshman coach. You know, he doesn't have the opportunity just yet to coach varsity. You got to kind of have to go through those steps and, you know, go through that line before you get to varsity. You know, you start off like freshman coach or middle school coach. And then if you do well there, then you network enough, then you can become the assistant coach. And then you perhaps have an opportunity to be a varsity. So once again, that's a good culture setup where that coach could come and talk to you before Bill left that room and left that locker room.
Exactly. And had he not felt comfortable coming to me, then he wouldn't. And again, the whole thing could have worked out totally different.
And to think that you were doing all of this and no one's over 6'2". Like 25 threes, like everybody is Steph Curry, Clay, Larry Bird, Kevin Durant, James Harden, all on the team at once for that night. Lights out. And the other team's like, what do we do? Well, double team. Okay, if we double team this one, he's going to keep hitting. Oh, yeah. I bet you that was a fun night for you to coach him. That had to be a fun night for you to coach him there.
Well, I'll tell you, the other team had only scouted us once, and they came out in a triangle and two, guarding the two guys who had been hot the night they scouted us. And I had a lefty, and he was so wide open. The first time down the floor, he airballed it, and then he made 7 3-pointers in the first quarter.
Wow!
And they didn't guard him. The whole first quarter. Yeah, it was a
learning lesson. Yeah, that's a learning lesson. They learned that.
and the fans, it was a packed gymnasium of about 2,500 people, and they were counting the threes. And when we hit 25, well, the state record had been 21. When we hit that, they went nuts. And then we hit 25. Now, another story. I don't know if we got time for it. You can cut it out if we.
Okay, keep going. Yeah.
The kid who hit the last three, the 25th three, was a junior to be honest, he wasn't a very good basketball player. And the next year after I left, he got cut. But he came down to Ohio State to go to college, and he ended up contracting a very serious form of cancer. And I didn't know him that well. I didn't really know his family that well, but we went to see him at the James Cancer Center a few times. And when he passed away, his mom called me and said that meant so much to Brandon that you would come see him in the hospital, having been his coach. And it was like, I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't really thought about how much it might mean. It was just something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But for them to say how much it meant, it was like, that brought tears to my eyes.
Where you become more than just coach. You're considered family in those instances. Yeah. Man, those are great stories, man. I appreciate you sharing those stories with us, Al.
Some of the best educators in the world are people you've never heard of. They may not be on TV or get the National Teacher of the Year awards, but we want to give those teachers their flowers today. We know the sacrifice and the heavy lifting these educators go through daily. With that said, we present Sprout Outs. Sprout Outs is sponsored by Pinky and Paws Petals. Owner and founder Jamaica Lewis has always loved flowers as a kid, and after her mom passed, she wanted to design the same flower arrangements she saw at her mom's funeral. She went to design school and learned how to craft and design floral arrangements. From there, the design started at home, and after great feedback, her business has flourished worldwide. Weddings, funerals, special occasions, and more. Pinky and Paws Petals ships artificial designs and delivers local ones in the Denver, Colorado area for now until after COVID. Now it's time for Sprout Out.
Al, after that great story, I'm sure you have a sprout out. Who would you like to sprout out this episode?
Well, this is somebody who means a lot to me. And you may know her because she was on the national faculty. Her name's Amanda Clark from Des Moines, Iowa, elementary specialist. And she and Sarah Lev are book authors now.
Yeah.
PBL in the elementary grades. But I'll tell you, the story with her was amazing. I got sent to a town in Alabama that was midway between Birmingham and Huntsville. And I was told I was going to have a co-facilitator. And it turned out to be Amanda.
Okay.
And I had a lot of observers, a lot of co-facilitators. But when I met Amanda, it was like there was this connection. It was like we clicked. And by the time we were done with that 3-day, and it was the last 3 days of school for them, believe it or not. And they took the teachers away from the school so they wouldn't be distracted by their classrooms. Now, you can imagine how these elementary teachers were on the last 3 days of school and they couldn't see their kids, right? But it was a wonderful thing. And by the time that was done, I said, Amanda, you're going to be my legacy. I'm getting old. I'm going to be out of this before long. You're going to be my legacy. And she's been a wonderful. I'm sad that we never got to work again, but I've stayed in touch with her. And I know she's doing wonderful work in the Des Moines area and, well, other places too, but, you know, that's her hometown. And she's really dedicated to the elementary grade. So I'd like to give that shout out to her.
Yeah. Shout out to you, Amanda.
Yes.
We believe when one wins, we all win. Al, how can others follow you on social media and help you win?
Well, I'm an old guy, so I don't do a lot of social media, but I do have a Facebook page that's pretty active, al.summers.14.
Okay.
And I do have a Twitter account. It's at hoops1106.
That now makes so much more sense that it was hoops. Okay, there it is. Yeah.
I'm still doing a lot of work with school districts in the areas of science and technology and especially project-based learning. And I've got a website where people can find all the information. It's alsummersconsulting.com. It's a pretty good website, and they can contact me through there as well.
Very good.
If you have a story that you like to share, just like Al did, you can email us at contact@andredowdy.org. We'd love to hear your story. Well, that's the end of this episode. Special thanks to Al and his story. Al, we truly appreciate you hanging with us today. You can connect with us on YouTube or watch any previous episodes on any of the platforms of podcasting. Well, this is the end of this episode. Don't forget to join us on the next episode of See What Had Happened.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcast.